Nice. Oh, by the way, Sonny, Dr. Magana, Sonny,
Or
the curtain's up.
are we
The curtain's
live?
up.
Oh,
We are absolutely live. So, but that was delightful. What a great catalyst to get my goosebumps moving for a conversation here near the end of 2024. How is Seattle doing today?
doing very well. Rocky Mountain Way. I'm learning how to play slide guitar. So that was my foray into a little slide on a gray December day. But all is good. The Seahawks won three in a row, so things are looking very positive for us here
Okay,
in the Great Northwest. How are things in
awesome.
Chicago?
Uh, Seasonal. It's one of those days that you wonder why you live in this godforsaken tundra, but but no surprises. I'll take it.
Okay.
It's not every day like this. So I'm delighted to have this conversation and delighted to introduce each other
Yeah.
to our respective networks, and then explain why we wanted to have this event and what we're going to talk about. So,
Yeah.
can I go ahead and
Please do.
share with
Yeah.
our listeners the bio that I whipped up for you?
Sure.
So, everyone, please meet Dr. Sonny Magana. He is a Seattle-based education consultant, executive coach, speaker, musician, and a best-selling author. He is the founder and CEO of Magana Education. Sonny holds degrees from Stockton University and City University of Seattle, and he earned his doctorate from Seattle University.
That's me. Yeah.
All right.
It's good to be with you. Thank you for
Thank
having
you.
me.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, as for myself, I'm a Chicago-based innovation consultant, author, and speaker. I'm the founder and president of Innovation Elegance LLC. I performed in numerous dance, music, and theater ensembles, which is why I have a keen appreciation for what Sonny just did. And my degrees are from the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign and Northwestern University, specifically the Kellogg School of Management. So, Sonny, I should also give credit to the folks who led us to each other.
Mhm.
So the breadcrumbs here, the first stepping stone to you was an event hosted by ACMP, the Association of Change Management Professionals, PNW, the Pacific Northwest chapter. And the speaker that day was a gentleman by the name of Alistair, a British gentleman, British bloke. Alistair introduced me to JD, and JD told me I needed to reach out to you. So it was uh, those guys are fantastic, as you know, and here we are.
Yeah, no, I'm really grateful. And JD Meyer connected us. I had a wonderful conversation with him about innovation and the fact that we're at the cusp of a new dawning of a new age with machine learning, artificial intelligence, agents that are trainable. So we are, I think, at the nascent stage of an explosion in human productivity like never before. And so we have to be mindful about that. So JD and I had a wonderful conversation about that work, and he was if I'm saying this correctly, he was the innovation coach for Microsoft CEO
Satya Nadella.
Satya Nadella, and so he knows innovation. And said, "Sonny, you got to meet Robert. You guys are musical. You've got a lot of ideas that have sticking points." And so I'm really grateful for that. So a big shout out to JD Meyer for connecting us. And our conversations were just so generative that you suggested we have a LinkedIn Live event. And so here we are. So thank you for
Yeah.
organizing this, Robert. I really appreciate you putting all the pieces together to have this conversation and share it with our channels and with folks who are interested in becoming learning organizations and how we can harness the potential of AI tools to further human productivity. So
Mm,
yeah, I'm excited about it.
mm, mm.
Habits, clarity, and education to solve wicked problems that matter.
Yes. So habits, clarity, education. That's where we landed on how to title this conversation. And if we have more threads to explore, it is our common passions, our collaboration,
Mhm.
and music, and the cross pollination of music and the performing arts, teaching, and specifically bringing structure to teaching.
Yeah.
And so you've done that at least in a couple books. Is this a good time to just explain, give your audience,
Sure.
give them an overview of your books?
Yeah, you bet. Well, fundamentally, I'm a simple teacher. I was a biology teacher for many, many years. I worked in alternative schools. I started an alternative school program for at-risk youth. I started America's first cyber school in 1996, which is the first distributed learning program in Washington State. It was in the Mukilteo School District where I worked. And so I've always been interested in finding the sweet spot between technology, pedagogy, and learning. First of all, determining if there was one. Are there a connection? What is the relationship between technology, learning, and teaching? And so I've been exploring those relationships for 45 years. Is a long time. So I first started researching the PC just made its way into education. It was an Apple IIe, and you learn a lot of things by making mistakes. I'll quote Niels Bohr, who's a Nobel Prize winning chemist who came up with the Bohr atomic model that we're all familiar with. We studied that I used to teach in high school. But he said an expert is someone who has made every possible mistake in a very narrow field. And I love that quote because it sort of honors the intentionality of learning from error. It's built into innovation, is learning from error. So in order to generate expertise, you got to make a lot of mistakes. You got to screw up an awful lot, but then with a mind frame to learn from those experiences and use them as springboards to propel you further. So in the 45 years that I've been researching educational technology, I've made a lot of mistakes. I don't know that I've made all of them, but I made a lot of them. So I think I'm approaching a type of expertise around highly reliable ways to harness different technologies in the support of human learning, human production, learning productivity, as I call it, and approaching the potential of realization of our potential. And so my books delve into that. The books, are very well researched tomes that dive into the most reliable ways that humans can use technologies to improve their productivity. My field, though, is education. My background is in education. My doctorate is in education research and leadership. But human learning is human learning is human learning. And it's not a stretch to transfer the knowledge that I've gained in my research pursuits in the field of education to other endeavors like adult learning, business learning, onboarding, helping organizations become learning organizations. And there's certain habits and prerequisites really that we're going to be discussing today to transfer this body of knowledge that from education into leadership. And I should say that my research-based methods, it's called the T3 framework for innovation, has been shown to compress 4 years worth of learning, 4 years worth of learning into a single year. Now, if you take it at face value, that's like quadrupling learning. If you can learn 4 times as fast or 4 times as much in a given unit of time, that's extraordinary. We have to be cautious about that. I don't make claims that you're guaranteed to quadruple your learning, but my research base has been peer reviewed. The findings have been inducted into the University of Oxford's Research Encyclopedia of Education. And for anyone who's watching, anyone who wants to learn more about it, please send me an email or DM me on Twitter or LinkedIn, and I'll send you a copy of that research. But 4 years of learning in a single year is a breakthrough, and it gives us reason for optimism. So that's what my work is all about, is I guess promoting optimism about the human condition and learning in the age of AI.
That's awesome. Optimism. I love that, as we started this session with you playing guitar, there's a beautiful culture trait in making of music and ensembles making music that it is about optimism and positivity, confidence and trust that everyone in the orchestra, everyone
Yeah.
in the symphony, we
Mhm.
know our lane, we fill our lane, we stay in our lane,
Yeah.
and we're incredibly disciplined about what we're there
Mhm.
for, and we're incredibly empathetic,
Mhm.
literally, figuratively, using even all five senses to understand where are our ensemble colleagues at any particular moment. So that's what came to my mind as
Mm.
you're talking about optimism in education.
Yeah.
So to take a tiny step toward our three topics of habits, clarity, and education, I'm going to set you up for a question, Sonny.
Mhm.
And it's a dance reference, a couple dance references actually. So I joke that everything I learned, the most everything I learned on the dance floor applies off the dance floor,
Yeah.
including
Right.
things like, well, let me get in the weeds of the dance, and then I'll bring it back up to learning. Is once I plateau in salsa, I'm going to move on to cha-cha, and once I
Mhm.
plateau in cha-cha, I'm going to move on to bachata. So the phrase here is learning never stops,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And that's what your life, your career, your legacy are working
Yeah.
toward. And so on the dance floor, leaders meet their followers where they are.
Mhm. Mm.
So if you were to channel that phrase for your readers, your
Mhm.
customers, past, present, future, when you meet them where they are,
Mhm.
is it one size fits all? Is your audience, are your dance followers highly fragmented, or how do you meet your customers where they are?
Yeah. That's a really important concept to really flesh out is meeting people where they are, which fundamentally means for myself as a consultant having humility. I have to have humility. That's a practice. That's something that it's a discipline really. Um, and that means having the humility to not assume um, progress or assume a level of competence without really understanding what the situation is. So, in business, we do a needs assessment or a market analysis. We do a needs assessment. In education, we do a needs analysis or a pre-test to see what is the knowledge, the body of knowledge that learners bring to a learning experience. In the business world, when meeting with clients, it's just as important to have an understanding of where the client is, what their needs are, and meet them at their point of comfort, not the other way around. Not try to force people to understand your point of view or your perspective. So there's a classic statement that we have two ears and one mouth, and we should use them in directly proportional to the items. We should listen twice as much as we speak. I'm guilty of not doing that right now, but in the context of my work and I think in effective consultative relationships, we should listen twice as much as we speak and strive to understand the situation and the characters involved, and their level of understanding of new content before you begin, because that does certain things. When you can talk about the current level of understanding, it's like a preview of what's to come. It does a couple of things. It previews what's to come, but it also, in our mind, we review what we already know about the circumstances or the conditions or the learning experience we're about to have. What do we know already? And that can help shift people to an assets orientation rather than a deficits orientation. An assets orientation is focused on what do we know, what's effective, what is good about our situation, what is productive, as opposed to a deficits orientation, which is a frame of mind that somebody enters into a new situation like I can't do this, or I don't know what's going on, or I'm unfamiliar, or I'm not confident. Helping shift to an assets orientation by listening to people and drawing out their understanding through questioning sequences is foundational.
Mm,
It really is.
yeah. So as you're talking, Sonny, I'm reminded of a statistic from the book Yes and,
Hmm.
the
Hmm.
definitive book on improv. And the statistic mentioned in that book is that while significant percentages of business professionals have had training in effective business speaking
Hmm.
or facilitation, or pick
Hmm.
a general skill, The statistic is that only 2% of business professionals have had formal training in listening, which feels like a statistic that we'd like to disrupt. We'd like to raise that that metric. The other metric, highly anecdotal, highly personal experience, is that when you think of making music, when you think of making music, solo or ensemble, I believe, especially when I've been in choirs, more than half of my energy is going toward listening. And even if I'm singing a solo, or if there's a piano playing, I need to match the piano. So more than 50% of my energy is going toward listening rather than emitting sound, right? And so I think that is that's an unorthodox observation about making music, that kind of
But it's
feeds into
true.
your point
I
about listening.
I think it's true. Yeah, I think it's um, uh, really distinct. When I play with a lot of players here in the Northwest, some great folks and some folks that are not so great, and I can find out how well I'll fit in to a group by determining the extent to which other people are listening to each other. Really great players know that it's just as much what you don't play as opposed to what you do play. Great players know that. And so they listen intently. What is the bass player doing? What's the drummer doing? How can I echo that phrase? And I'll tell you, it was a great guitarist, one of the greats from Steely Dan, Larry Carlton, who I heard on a podcast, and he talked about this. He said, if you're a musician, you're a guitarist, and you want to play stuff, you want to play your instrument, you want to play guitar, you want to shred, you're going to find limited use for that frame of mind. I just want to shred. I just want to, rock out. Musicians want to have conversations. And foundational to any conversation is the ability to listen intently to what the other folks are doing and add your piece, not too much, not too little, just the right economy. And I think that's a truism that's applied in theater, in performance, but also in organizational development and business practices. Listen first, then speak. And listen, if you can, try to get that 2-to-1 ratio.
Yeah, yeah. So I think you mentioned the phrase, what to do and what to not do. And earlier in this conversation, you talked about the mistakes that you've observed over your career. And so again, to take another step toward our primary three topics, I think that it's helpful for all professionals to be able to give labels to what good looks like and what bad looks like. So can we really let's focus in on these three topics of habits. What are the good and bad habits that you are observing? What are the clarity? What does good clarity look like? What does bad clarity look like? And the last topic of education. What do you see that's good, and what are you observing that's less than good?
Yeah, great. I'm going to start with clarity first because I think that's an important principle. So, I'm writing a new book called Teaching in the Zone, and it's the 5 essential principles for the AI age, because we can use technologies to do stuff, and we'll just be making sounds. But if we use technologies in a principled way, we apply principles of human learning to enhance our use of agents, AI tools, bots, you name it. We're far more likely to have the outcomes that we desire as opposed to just using tools to save time or to do our work for us. So the first principle is clarity. And in the learning phase, it's essential, and it's often missing. Clarity of intention, clarity of criteria for success, and clarity of content. So in the education world, if students don't know with a very clear picture what the learning outcomes will look like, they can't possibly imagine themselves realizing that outcome. I mean, really, it's the lowest hanging fruit we can do. If every classroom in these United States, and not just K through 12, every learning system, no matter what it is, it could be corporate learning, it could be adult learning, it could be a group of professors learning in academia. Every learning intention, every learning experience should begin with crystal clear intentions of what that learning is, and crystal clear criteria for achieving those intentions. So think about that for a moment. Most people enter business meetings without a clear idea of what they're doing, or what they're trying to do. What are we trying to accomplish? And so there's a lot of wasted energy, a lot of wasted time and wasted discussion. And that leads to sidebar conversations, and you go off track, and then you know the person leading the experience has to sort of herd the cats back into, like, this is what we're doing. So all we need to do is phrase our intentions of the outcome with as much clarity as possible, and that removes the ambiguity from the experience. And if we couple that with criteria, like we're going to achieve this in such a way that, and then list the 2 or 3 criteria, that completes a package of mental constructs for individuals in the organization or the meeting or the learning experience, and they can start to fill in their gaps. The human brain is remarkable at doing an awful lot of development with very small pieces of information. AI is the opposite. You know, AI doesn't really create anything. Our artificial intelligence chatbots, they don't really create content. They take content that exists and repackage it for us, and so that we can consume it. You know, it's like, I want to write a book called Teaching Your Bot to Fetch, because that's yeah, it's a cool title. It's a cool title, but that's essentially what you're doing. You're teaching your bot to do things for you. It doesn't do anything for you. The human brain can create worlds of information out of very, very little knowledge. With small number of facts, small bits of knowledge, we can create all kinds of limitless structures. AI is the opposite. It takes almost the sum total of knowledge that exists online and packages it for us, because humans have imagination. So when we tap into that imagination and allow folks to understand, you know, these are our outcomes, this is what we want to achieve, this is what we intend for this experience, that sets up an internal dialogue for every individual in the room that I'll talk about in a moment. But I want to stop for a second and say, you know, to what extent does that resonate with you? What sort of experiences have you had where, for example, you've had clear learning intentions or not? And what kind of a difference does that make for you, Robert?
I feel like I've had many experiences with this thing called VUCA.
Yeah.
That acronym: volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. So I think that the acronym VUCA is having this resurgence because there's a lot of it, and it's the opposite of this topic.
It's the opposite of clarity. Yeah, right.
So I love the quote from Chris McChesney's book, The 4 Disciplines of Execution. And the quote is, execution's 2 best friends are simplicity and transparency. Okay. And so in my work, my books, my public speaking, I'm trying to show my audience, my readers, that regardless of where you are in the org chart, you have your hands on 2 levers. And if you push those levers in the negative direction, you increase complexity and ambiguity, the last 2 letters of VUCA. And if you pull those same 2 levers in the right direction, a healthy direction, you achieve what Chris McChesney is encouraging: simplicity and transparency.
There you go.
So Sonny, you mentioned the phrase "in the zone," right? We can use that cliche, that phrase, in sports, in music, in relationships. I often use the term muscle memory. You know, being on autopilot, and it's a form of automation. Even if technology's not involved, we can feel, it's second nature. We can, quote, do stuff in our sleep, which is a healthy place to be because it allows us to elevate our focus and our energy past the minutia and the mechanics, and we can get more empathetic and strategic and stylish.
Oh, sorry, back there. We had a hiccup in the connection.
All right.
Last thing I heard was the term muscle memory and the ambiguity. So let me riff off of that for a moment.
Sure.
The opposite of clarity is ambiguity. If we were to have a continuum, and on one end is clarity, and I would say that characteristics of clarity are simplicity. If something is simple to understand, simple to hold a construct in your mind, that has simplicity. If there's transparency, it means that there's no hiding information. Everybody is clear. You have a collective understanding, collective transparency of what you're trying to achieve, what your outcomes are, what your mission is for the organization. With ambiguity comes stagnation. And I would even say
paralysis.
Yeah, that's right, paralysis by analysis. And it's, I think the VUCA term, I think is almost like a blanket that people use to hide a host of sins, and it's almost like an excuse. It's like, oh well, it's volatile, it's uncertain, there's chaos and ambiguity, and so I'm not going to try as hard. I'm not going to really achieve. I'm not going to optimize my work.
It's a cop out, and it's a license for low expectations.
Agreed. I beautifully said. It's a license for a low expectation. Here's why clarity is so important, and again, it's on the opposite end of ambiguity. When we have crystal clear intentionality of what it is we're trying to achieve, it does something to the human mind. It allows the individual to determine a future state, some future state of existence, which is imaginative. It doesn't exist. We have to imagine what that is in our mind, while holding an opposite reality in our mind simultaneously, which is the here and now. So when we have a clear understanding of the here and now, our needs, our limitations, our resources, the situation at hand, and a clear understanding of some future state that doesn't exist yet, it creates a cognitive, and I would even say a psychic tension, psychological, even psychic, like all of our senses and internal forces are stressed because the brain simply can't handle things that are unresolved. We have to have closure. We feel very uncomfortable when we don't have closure. So when holding these two opposite things, the here and now and what we want to achieve, it creates a tension, which generates energy, and it kind of compels us forward to that state. That's one of the reasons why clear intentions of a process are so important, and it is the lowest hanging fruit. If we just provided clarity in our meetings, in our business planning, in our strategic planning, in our analysis, in our forecasting, so that it's understandable and transparent, but also tends to what we want to achieve. It can help individuals create that tension and that energy, which will compel them forward. That's a very powerful set of ideas that are really based around this foundational principle of clarity.
Awesome. As I'm listening, Sonny, I wrote down, we don't need to expect perfection, but we absolutely can expect perfect intentions.
There you go.
Good faith action.
Yeah.
I absolutely believe that we can expect zero bad faith behavior. Are there lapses? Sure. Hopefully minimal ethical lapses. I forget where I read that, but when we think of forgiveness of human error, some phrase I caught somewhere was the only true mistake is the ethical misjudgment, where you know what, you didn't need to do that. And so the term, again, playful mischievous term I wrote down the word idiot proof. Is there a time and place for clarity in the interest of clarity? I believe there is a time and place to make certain things idiot
Mm,
proof, child proof,
mm,
narcissist proof. Any
mm.
reaction, agree or disagree?
Wow, that's a three powerful forces there. Um, I think in organizations we have to again approach things with humility, with understanding we don't have all the answers, and when we're human like everyone else, you know, we're going to make mistakes, but we should um, have an assumption that if everyone is working for a business, everyone agrees to the collective mission of that organization. But that's not always the case. That's not always the case, that everyone has good intentions and is involved in goodwill interaction. So, you know, there's the you know, classic persona is somebody who's a saboteur that is trying to derail meetings. Everybody knows who that person is. It's usually somebody who's, you know, uh, causing undue attention to him or herself, engaging in um, a power struggle with the leader. There's these certain behaviors that are indicative of kind of, you know, the saboteur. But when intentionality is clearly expressed at the outset and a belief that everyone can and will achieve these intentions for the collective good of the group, the team, the organization, the company, those behaviors are sort of, they don't go away, but they go into the back burner because it's hard to argue against clarity. It's hard to argue against simplicity. I mean, people do it, but it's not conducive. You look sort of idiot. So maybe that is when clarity can provide some idiot proofing, because if you argue against a clear learning intention, that is, you know, a little idiotic.
It leads to high marginal cost and
Yeah,
VUCA.
yeah.
It slows us down,
Hmm.
reduces our quality. So I think there are numerous very pragmatic culture traits that allow us to have a backbone and push back against narcissistic behavior. The metaphor I often use is the bull in a china shop, the person who formally or informally feels like their unique value add is lobbing grenades. And
Yeah,
instead of playing yes and,
yeah.
they're playing yes but, they're playing no,
Hmm.
whataboutism, that sort of thing.
Yes, that's
So,
classic
so
obstructionism. Classic
yeah,
obstructionism uses those sentence stems, those terms, to derail, in order to kind of sandbag and not really, you know, contribute. Now that's a habit. You know, that's a habit, right?
yeah,
And
keep going. Yeah.
so Aristotle said, you know, excellence then is not an act but a habit. All right, let's parse that out for a moment, because that's now we're going to go back to the habit part of our conversation. We need to make clarity a habit. What makes a habit a habit? I've spent a lot of time, you know, researching this and writing about it and talking about it, discussing it. Humans are habitual. We are a very habitual animal. We like our habits, and we don't like to be when our habits are disrupted. Some habits are highly constructive and highly beneficial to ourselves and those around us. Others obviously are not. I mean, we all picked up a lot of habits during the COVID years. You know, my habit is I started learning how to really play guitar. I really
Mm.
wanted to learn to be, you know, a musician, not just a guitar player. I wanted to heed Larry Carlton's words and listen to people and add. I find the seams. You know, I like to play in between phrases, find those little seams and have a little tasty lick, and do it with economy. That's a habit. A habit is something that starts off as a strategy or a practice, and it takes a lot of our mind share to do it. Once we do something so often that we use less and less of our attention and our cognitive structure to attend to that strategy, it there's a level of automaticity that arises. So then we do things very habitually. For example, like if you ever learn how to drive a stick shift, the first time you drive a stick shift, you got to pay close attention to what you're doing. You're using a lot of your brain work to adjust your pedals and the steering and traffic and the stick shift. After a short period of time, that becomes habitual. It becomes, we do it with a level of automaticity. I think that is true for not everything, but for many things that we do as humans. It starts off as a strategy or a task or a procedure. And with the freedom of discipline, continuous development, do something every day, 5 minutes a day, you can learn a new habit. So I've come up with this term in my new book, learning in the zone. And the zone is that space where, I mean, you mentioned it, and it's very gracious of you to say that. We all know what the zone is. We've all experienced it at some point or another. Sometimes you're in the pocket, is a musician's term. If you're an athlete and you hit a great golf swing and everything's working, you're in the zone. That's a psychological state where you have developed so many good habits that you're realizing your potential quite readily, and you're not using a lot of mind share to do it. You're doing it with a level of automaticity.
Yeah, love that. So the habits that I am trying to disrupt for my readers and my audiences, the two habits that I'm trying to euthanize, is that too strong of a word? It's a pretty strong word.
Unlearn. Let's use
Yes,
unlearn.
thank you. It's the habit of meeting minutes and the habit of verb sprawl. Because when a team is documenting a lot of meeting minutes, all it tells me is that a group of people talked and you found someone, a chump, to scribe. Were you collaborating? Don't know. Did the strongest personality monopolize the meeting? Don't know, but probably. Are you good with whatever you wrote down in those meeting minutes? Are you going to refer back? Are those still going to be valuable 6 to 12 months from now? Did the meeting minutes let someone off the hook who's, quote, too busy, either double booked, triple booked? So does it give so much rope to folks so that they're just undisciplined, or a team is undisciplined about the sequence of work that they do? So the other habit I'm trying to break is what I call verb sprawl. We might use that phrase, a team that's, quote, all over the place. What is a symptom of a team that's all over the place? That their documentation is undisciplined, and if they do have a task list or a project plan, couple dozen different verbs, 30, 40 distinct verbs. And so what I'm proposing, again, for on this topic of muscle memory, good habits, rituals, is instead of meeting minutes, I'm going to back up. I'm going to do these in the other order. Instead of verb sprawl, imagine your team as a kind of agreement factory. A team agrees on a roadmap, agrees on the project charters, agrees on the future state process flow, et cetera. So, and I joke that if anyone's nervous about the word sign off, we can hedge and call it an expectation factory. And if you've got 40 different verbs, that's still messy. But the 5 verbs framework that I preach makes things more elegant. It's anti-VUCA. It is the opposite of VUCA, and that's where I got the word, the label, the brand of elegance. And so this 5 verbs framework, and I won't go into detail about it, but I'll at least say them. Yeah. The verbs are draft, review, revise, approve, distribute. Someone at a recent conference in San Diego gave me an acronym, thank God. And so the acronym of the 5 verbs is Dr. Rad, DRRAD. So thank God, at least now there's an acronym which is relatively new. So what I'm hoping, the habits that my work encourage innovation professionals is that instead of verb sprawl and meeting minutes, please consider governing with 5 verbs, not the 4 adjectives of racy, but the 5 verbs, Dr. Rad, and know, what does your team do that's worth putting on paper that can withstand the rigor of 5 verbs? Because it's so rigorous, 5 verbs, by leaning into the documentation, helps you avoid over documentation, because the minute you cannot assign one of those verbs, the team, by process of elimination, has said, this is not worth documenting. Do that work at the pub, and I guess it'll be done in an hour. So I maintain that collaborative innovation work, it's not worth 4 adjectives. The RACI matrix, the RACI framework's been around for 20 years. not solving your biggest problems. And there's another form of speech in the English language that conveys action. And that form of speech is not an adjective. It's a verb. So 5 verbs helps you shape a culture of discipline, empathy. Can you create a symphony out of an infinite number of meetings, emails, and verbs? No, no, and hell no. But what you can create a symphony out of are 2 finite dimensions. That's 5 verbs. And whatever your team concludes, this is worth the rigor of the 5 verbs. And so I just wanted to explain why this term habits, I think it's so useful in my work for my readers and my audiences, because it does help you get in the groove and have this muscle memory so that you minimize reinventing the wheel, right? There's a distinction between what is creative and innovation work and what is absolutely not creative. If you have a project charter, that's not what's creative. What's creative is what's inside the project charter. That you have a process flow, that's not creative, and it should not be creative. What's creative is what's inside the process flow. So thanks for hearing me out on that.
No, I
Sonny,
love
on
that.
all
I
these
love
things
that.
about habits.
Yeah, it's great because you've crafted a framework. I mean, the 5 verbs is a framework, and frameworks help us frame reality so that not only can we make sense of reality, but we can make meaning from circumstances, right?
Yeah.
And so, that's a wonderful tool, is to frame situations, and that provides clarity. So your framework, your Dr. Red: draft, review, revise, approve, distribute. That is an actionable framework that provides clarity. Frameworks provide clarity, and to get back to the habit idea, I came up with this term called meta learning. And so my book, Learning in the Zone, the subtitle is called The 7 Habits of Meta Learners. And what is a meta learner? What is meta learning? That concept didn't exist. So I sort of coined, as best as I could, what I intend by one who is a meta learner. Here's how I define it. A meta learner, someone who can step out of themselves and kind of transcend their experience and get the bigger picture simultaneously while they're involved in a task at hand. We have the ability to sort of pan out and say, how does this relate to the bigger picture? Meta learning then is the innate ability to optimize learning how to learn, learning how to unlearn, and learning how to relearn. So that is a literacy. That is the literacy for the age of AI. We need to be able to unlearn things. Unlearn maybe fear of technology, maybe unlearn hesitancy when it comes to using agents or robots or chatbots, and relearning new things. It's a process that we do almost unconsciously, oftentimes unconsciously. But when we add a level of consciousness and intentionality to learning and unlearning habits, and then relearning new habits, that provides clarity. And clarity helps us move the ball forward. It helps move the needle forward.
Yeah. So I was going to check our time and check how are we doing according to our 3 topics that we wanted to hit. And I think we are already in our 3rd topic of education.
Right.
And I did write down some notes in reaction, but what I'm drawn to, Sonny, is tiptoeing toward either a call to action that you would have for our audience today, or, and I'm not in a hurry to, hang up or, end our session here, but you might have a call to action for our audience today, but you also undoubtedly have a call to action for so you and I are both disruptors of the status quo. We see the status quo as unacceptable. And if you talk to us in 20 years, I bet you and I will still take the stance that the status quo, I mean, how often is the status quo unacceptable? Always, right? Learning never stops. Innovation never stops. So I'm going to be purposely provocative here, but do you have someone in mind? Is it a government official or officials at any level of government or is it business? Is it leaders? Is it followers? A certain demographic? Who, just like we are trying to disrupt the status quo, you cannot do that in isolation.
Yeah.
You need allies to accomplish what you have in mind. We need a market, and if there's no market, we fail at our objectives and legacy. But if we have a market, they agree. They effectively are playing yes and to the change that we believe is valuable. And so I'm sorry I'm so long-winded here. What was Mark Twain? If I had more time, I would have made this question succinct. So who 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 do you want next to disrupt the status quo? Who do you need to listen to your ideas because they have a hand on a lever
Yeah.
or a forum? They have a microphone. Who do you want next to disrupt the status quo on education?
You know, the fallback answer is leadership, but that's a little easy. It's too facile. Like say, oh, your leader's got to do it. Wait a minute, but who are the leaders? My position is that in education, we need to develop leaders. Education is a function of developing leadership capacity among everyone in the system. So when students become their own leaders of learning and leaders of learning for their peers, that's a happy state called collective student efficacy. When students collectively believe they can and will help each other and benefit from the service they provide to one another. Then there's the teacher leadership. Teachers are absolutely classroom leaders, but they can also be grade level leaders, content area leaders, team leaders. That has to be developed. And then, of course, building principals at the building level, that leadership, and district level leadership. I'm of the impression that leadership is a team sport. I think leadership is something that we can develop in all individuals to take on some of the mantle of leadership, including the responsibility and the objectives of the organization. And that's where the education part comes in. Education, if you go back to the etymology of the word comes from the Greek word called educare, which means literally to draw out from within. Now think about that for a moment. To draw out from within. If you were to ask 20 different people on the street what they mean by education, they would probably tell you that it's about giving information or transmitting knowledge or filling learners up with some knowledge, which is exactly the opposite of the term education. To draw out from within presupposes that the potential for leadership or learning is a pre-existing condition. It's a pre-existing condition. And we have to create the environments that are conducive to letting that innate leadership capacity flourish to the benefit of the organization. So this could be another conversation around, what do we mean by education? And are we actually in our learning environments holding true to the very concept of education by drawing out that knowledge and potential and potentiality that exists inside others? Or are we trying to force people to fit into certain roles or personas or characteristics? That's a wicked problem. And that's why, a wicked problem is a problem that's challenging, it's important, it's multifaceted, it's intractable, and is as yet unresolved. I think we have a wicked problem of understanding the purpose of education and being true to helping develop leadership capacity. So my call to action is working with all individuals in school systems to develop their leadership in their particular sphere of influence. And it's there are stages, there are habits, there are strategies that underpin those habits, and ultimately they're informed by principles. So just kind of sum up, I'd say for a call to action, I'd encourage folks to read my books, Disruptive Classroom Technology, Learning in the Zone, contact me, connect with me and learn more about what my work is and how I can help organizations realize their potential and approach a new idea called collective system efficacy. I have the great pleasure of working with Professor John Hattie, who I consider a mentor and a friend. He's a wonderful person, just an educational researcher of just world renown. And he's been very helpful in getting my messaging out to folks. But he says what we need to do is teach less and learn more. In fact, I think that's the national mantra now for education in Singapore, is to teach less and learn more. So if we as individuals develop our collective system efficacy, we're listening to one another, we're learning from one another, and we're developing habits that are collective to the well-being and positive contribution of the whole, of the collective. And that's what I do organizationally. So
Awesome. So you tiptoed into that topic of wicked problems, and I would love for us to explore for maybe 5 minutes, maybe 10 minutes on that topic of wicked problems. But I realize that I should and I would like to answer my own question about
Great.
who am I expecting, who am I wanting to disrupt the status quo with me? And I wrote down 3 answers, but there's something else that you mentioned about learning. So I'm gonna go there as well. So the first population that I would like to join me in disrupting the status quo of what I'll call innovation dysfunction and innovation illiteracy. You used the word earlier, literacy. I call it innovation illiteracy. When folks or people in power, they don't know what good teamwork looks like. They're good climbers. They're not good leaders. And they don't even know that there's a difference between climbership and leadership. There's a lot of climbership out there masquerading as leadership. That's a harsh reality that we have to deal with. But the first population I would ask to disrupt the status quo is whoever feels psychologically safe to do so. When I've been asked this question in the past, Robert, who should take action on your frameworks? Would it be a project manager? Would it be a change manager? Would it be a business analyst? Would it be a C-suite, VP of app dev or something like that? And I'm less interested in their seniority, and I'm more interested in whether they feel psychologically safe to disrupt the status quo and point out the systemic and systematic errors and dysfunction, bad habits. The second population is whoever finds the status quo as sufficiently unacceptable. So I love the cliche, nothing will change until the status quo is more painful than the transition. And I get that there are plenty of people that, oh yeah, things are kind of crummy, but it's just more painful for them to move and disrupt and change culture. So for those who are comfortable and the status quo isn't that painful, I do not look to you to change innovation, to move the innovation frontier. But for those who are sufficiently exasperated about the status quo, I hope they will contribute to disrupting the status quo of innovation illiteracy.
Good.
Which means that person, it's not about them, because if they were self-absorbed, they would be a climber. And if they are a true leader, they are truly empathetic. They care about their colleagues around them. They care about their next customer. And so those of us, the most empathetic people in the business world, I believe, are best positioned to disrupt the status quo. Yeah. And then the final point I want to make, Sonny, is you're talking about learning, meta learning. Learning is everywhere. And I would like innovation professionals to remind themselves every day, day in and day out in your work, you are either working on something under the umbrella called current state, or you are working on something under the umbrella called future state. And regardless of where you're working, you are learning something about the current state, about the dysfunction of the customer experience, employee experience, or new markets, or you are learning about the future state, about what do people have in mind for a better, better, faster, cheaper, a better customer experience. So regardless of which side of innovation you are on, you are the chased or the chaser. listening and understanding your colleagues' perspectives on things. Learning happens every day. Even when it's not labeled that, learning, it's teamwork, right? Teamwork is learning. These are almost synonymous. And so thanks for hearing me out about
Yeah.
who I look to disrupt the unacceptable status quo of innovation
Mm.
literacy.
So what you're describing is a meta learner. You're looking for people that are, and I would have to put myself in the same category. The people that tend to implement my methods, my framework, my sequence of strategies and principles to the greatest effect are those that are interested in continuously improving their craft.
Yeah.
That continuous improvement is the overarching objective, and I think that it transcends the VUCA crutch. If you're engaged in making continuous improvement, incremental improvement, that's what we strive for, and that's how you get collective system efficacy. Whenever collective system efficacy is that happy state where everyone in an organization believes they can and will optimize their performance to create optimum value by continuously improving their knowledge base, their processes, and their understanding and their empathy towards the needs of others. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
right on. That's a great way to bring closure.
So how much time should we explore wicked problems, and where do you, if I talk slowly enough, I'll be able to think about where do we, what is our point of entry for wicked problems,
Yeah.
and how far can we reach on a scale from 1 to 10? How much do
Mm,
we think we can contribute to the approach to, maybe a single wicked problem
mhm.
or wicked problems in general? Again, we can get kind of meta about it.
Yeah, we listen.
Um,
I mean, I'm going to suggest that we leave a little dry powder and we have this
hmm,
conversation again because the,
okay.
the the concept of wicked problems, identifying, investigating, and then coming to resolution of those wicked problems is something I've spent a long time developing, and I have a framework and even a tool called the Wicked Problem Solution Generator to help organizations understand. Like it's a process. It's a flow to help. Solve wicked problems using the tenets of science.
Hmm,
So that's too big to just to wrap into a brief bit. So if it's okay with you, maybe we could
yeah.
continue this conversation again. I have certainly enjoyed myself, and I
Yeah.
think that the whole notion of wicked problems and solving wicked problems through clarity and habits may be the part two of our discussion today. How does that sound?
Absolutely. Absolutely. That'll
Yeah.
that'll
Okay.
that'll keep us under 60 minutes as well.
Okay, yeah. So cliffhanger.
Um,
Tune in
exactly.
next time when we
Right.
talk about wicked problems, what they are, why they're important, and how they relate to continuous organizational development towards collective system efficacy. That'll be
Mm,
part two.
mm, awesome. Okay, so let's try to form a closing
Mm,
statement, a call to action.
mhm.
You, in the last about 20 seconds ago, you gave me mine, but I'm going to write it down because I don't know how succinct I can keep it. Um, do you have any parting, um, I don't know, words of
Sure.
encouragement?
Yeah. No, I think we are on the cusp of an incredible time. 2025 isn't just the dawning of a new year. I really think it's the dawning of a new age, and a new age that's powered by supercomputing. I mean, for goodness sakes, Google just came up with a quantum chip that has incredible computing capacity. We're going to see some really interesting stuff in the next 5, 10 years. We're in a new era, and we have to approach the age of AI with humility and with a scientific and artistic understanding of how to harness these tools to achieve evergreen intentions that continuously um, build on themselves. So that's what I hope for people is that in this coming year, look at the literature, look at my work, and apply it to yours. I'm happy to help and consult, not just in education, but in the business realm. I also work with several companies, and think about: do you want to maintain the status quo, which means that the rest of the world is gonna move past you. There is no standing still. You're either moving forward or you're moving backwards.
Mm.
And I encourage everyone listening to consider that we're right on the cusp of an entirely new era for humanity, but we have to do it with humility and with the tenets of art and science.
Yeah, awesome. Okay, so I'm going to piggyback on those words, art and science. However, I use the words discipline and empathy.
Mm.
And in this session, I mentioned the 5 verbs. I mentioned verb sprawl and meeting minutes, and these are all under the culture trait of discipline. That stuff can often be just plain dry and sterile. So where's the fun? Where's the mischief? Where's the beauty? Where's the romance? Because in innovation, we need that, right? You need the love as a decision, not as a feeling, but love your customers, love people as a decision. We've already mentioned innovation. It's a team sport. It's not a solo sport. And because of the dryness and sterility of the metaphor of a factory, an asset portfolio, I look to the performing arts. Do you want to get your guitar ready?
Sure.
Let's do an outro. So what I'll end on is that I draw inspiration from the performing arts, and it's theater, it's dance, it's improv, and it's music. And I want to quote a Chicago dance pioneer. Her name is Lisa Laboriqua. And her quote that she says to beginner dancers is what I want to say to every innovation leader out there. If you're smiling, if your dance partner is smiling, then you know you're doing it right. So, Sonny, how about an outro of whatever you're in the mood for? Love it. Love it. Awesome. Thank you for that. Thank you for this time together. And I'll see you backstage. All right.
See you.